is he go?
Okay, good morning. I'm going to turn things over to Lieutenant Nyberg.
Good morning. My name is Aaron Nyberg. I'm a lieutenant in the Crimes Against Persons section here. And I'm here this morning to give you an update on a homicide that we had happen over the weekend. So, in the early morning hours, about 3:41 on 9/7/2024, officers got dispatched to 808 West Bailey, number 12. The type of call was to remove an individual from an apartment. The female renter had made a report with the police alleging inappropriate contact between a male that lives in the apartment and her child. The female and kids had then not been at the apartment for some time and were returning to the apartment. So when officers arrived on scene, they found a male dead with apparent gunshot wounds inside. The deceased is identified as first name Casey. It's Casey. Middle is Sean Edward, Shawnedward. Last of Schaefer, Shaffer. He was a 30-year-old Sioux Falls resident. During the investigation, a suspect was developed and an arrest was made. The individual arrested, first name is Dylan, Dylan. Middle is Tyler, Tyler. Last of Farmer, Farmer. He's a 30-year-old Sioux Falls resident. He was arrested for first-degree murder and lodged at Minnehaha County Jail. He'll have a court appearance at 1:30 today. As far as the case moving forward, autopsy is scheduled for today, which we hope to have more information there, and there's still ongoing investigation to process the items from the scene and track down anybody else that may have been involved or present when the incident happened. So, anybody have any questions?
There was a rape reported on the Wadsworth intersections, right? There was a rape reported at that same intersection maybe hours before that. Is that the other incident?
Yeah, that's the report of the alleged inappropriate contact between the male and the child.
And so, hold on a second. I guess I lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me in a sec.
Okay.
Is there any, I guess, is that aspect of the case still under investigation as part of this?
Yes, it all leads into the entire incident, and all the people that we know of so far seem to know each other in the incident, but we're still following up on leads of anybody else who might have been there.
Can you tell us, these two gentlemen, which of them, are they related to the initial victim?
The deceased is the person who's the subject of the alleged inappropriate contact and lived at the apartment.
And
It's
so,
his primary residence?
Yes.
what about the mother and the child, or was it a mother and a child, or?
Yes.
So did they live at that residence, or they were just returning?
Yes, they also lived at the
They all
residence.
Okay, so they all three lived at the residence? Did anybody else live at the residence?
At this point in the investigation, I'm not sure if somebody else lived there or had just been staying there as far as a primary resident.
So the deceased's primary residence was the scene of the crime.
Correct.
Court documents had said he'd been staying there for 2 days. I guess, can you explain the difference there? It said he'd been staying there for 2. It made it sound like perhaps it had been a temporary situation.
Okay. I don't know that he had any other residence besides the place where he was staying there.
Okay.
So at that point, that would be his residence.
Dylan Tyler Farmer, his relationship to the other residents of that address?
Yeah, for investigative reasons, I can't get into too much, but I can tell you that everyone was known to each other. They all knew each other.
Can you tell us the nature of the injuries, what was used?
He did have apparent gunshot wounds. He did have have what appears to be a gunshot wound in his head, and it's a small caliber handgun. And I'll have more information, obviously, after the autopsy, so.
So do we know anything about the motive?
Um,
Was it the inappropriate contact?
yeah, for investigative purposes, that's really all I can divulge at this time, so.
Did the victim, did he have a history of sex crimes, do we know, or are you able to answer that at this time?
Yeah, for investigative reasons, I won't be able to get into any more than what I've already released, so.
Eighth
Yes,
homicide?
it's the 8th homicide that we've had. And I know the chief was gonna come up here and talk a little bit more.
I was
So
hoping
I'll get out of your way.
You're hoping to what?
to prompt you to go.
Yeah,
There's a reason I'm here.
I'll get out of his way. The only other thing that I wanted to mention, because I know that he was probably gonna bring it up, and I haven't talked to him yet this morning about it, is we are still working the other 2 homicides that have happened. I don't have anything new to report, but detectives are actively investigating and following up on leads. We're also working on the missing person case that you saw in the media the other day on Mr. Weathersby. We've been in contact with the family. We're coordinating drone searches on some of the last areas that the individual was seen, either by us on camera somewhere or been reported to us. We're also using legal service to try to leverage some of the social media and other sources for information so that we can try to develop some leads on where Mr. Weathersby could be. So,
There's a huge rumor mill on the internet about this whole Tyler Weathersby
Sure.
situation. Can you clear up if you guys are like suspicious about whether he's still alive or not, or if there's any foul play involved?
I would just say that we try to, there's a rumor mill on everything that we investigate usually. We're treating this like any other missing person case where we have someone that would disappear and it's concerning to their family members. These are all things that we would do on every missing person case until we can rule things out, so.
Has anything been ruled out?
Not at this point. We're still actively investigating and doing what we can to try to leverage these places with legal service for information and conducting drone searches and things of that nature, so.
I had a question, kind of going back to the Friday homicide.
Mhm.
According to the court documents, the suspect tried to turn himself in, but police turned him away. Can you explain
Well,
that?
officers did have contact with him earlier in the day and took information from him, but at that point, I can't go out and arrest somebody for confessing a crime to me until I have some information that the crime has actually happened. So that was then the first person that we went and found and were able to talk to after we were able to find this scene. So yeah, there was contact between him and the police earlier in the day.
In the same vein as that, look at the documents aren't 100% clear. I mean, they say he starts coming up with, at least the documents say he starts coming up with more details, but don't make clear, was there a break between him, I guess, did they need to go back and get him to arrest him, or as he began divulging more details of the...
Yeah, he was not in police custody for the entire time.
Okay.
No, from the first call to the second time he was in custody.
Mhm.
So,
When you say you can't go out and arrest somebody, can you explain that's a procedural problem so as not to step on the constitutional rights of somebody and then have that come back to you later? Is that it, or why?
certainly, everybody has constitutional rights. So, because you've confessed to something, obviously we're going to take note of it and take that information down. But until I have probable cause that a crime has been committed, and then I have facts and circumstances that suggest that you're the person that committed that crime, I can't put handcuffs on you and take your freedom away and take you to jail until I have all that information to do that. So,
You could be lying.
yeah.
So did police go to search apartments in the area that he made reference to after he made that claim?
Yeah, but no scene was found until later when the renter showed up. All right.
Yeah, it was, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a unique nuance. If you've worked patrol long enough, we've had some pretty unique confessions to us about things that have never happened, right? So to Lieutenant Nyberg's point, it's obviously documented, take note of, and then in the rare circumstance that it actually was, like this one, then we have the ability to go back, use that information. Obviously, that's why it appears in the affidavit that you pulled and stuff like that, right? Because it's all interlocking. But yeah, I can think back to my career, not as long as Sam's career, but the number of confessions I've received that were ended up not being anything, but I have had ones that have turned out into something. So we do a good job of documenting that. But no, I wanted to come today because naturally, with another homicide over the weekend, this is going to draw scrutiny and attention from the public and from the media, which we would anticipate, right? Especially, I think you cited the numbers, 8 homicides, obviously up from our last year's number, which was a historic low of 2, which we were obviously very pleased with. But we understand the ebb and flow of police work and the way that our industry kind of works. We kind of respond to things that happen and go out and have to deal with them. Again, coming back, we were in a similar spot, I think, in 2020 when we were talking about the 13 homicides that took place this year, and we have kind of a stretch here that would naturally gain your attention. I think what's important to point out about these last 3 in particular, A, is the incredible work of our investigators. Since the Dunham Park incident, they've pretty much been working nonstop. And I think everybody thinks they want to be a detective until they realize what detectives actually have to do when situations like these arise, and walked up to the Bureau today and talked with our detectives who are working super hard and ragged from basically nonstop cases that they're investigating. And as you know, as a department, we place a high priority in our investigative work, closing cases, holding people accountable who commit crimes, especially homicide. And again, our team is doing an outstanding job in doing that. But if you look at these 3 incidents, each one uniquely different, each have unique circumstances, and none of them were random. There's all a story behind each one. And so I'm just encouraging people to say, rather than look at some broad numbers or some broad generalizations, if you dig into numbers, each one of these has a story, each one of these has a tragic victim, and each one needs to be looked at in that regard, and not necessarily in pushing a narrative about something or something within our community. So again, obviously it's of concern for us. We'll be sharing more stats within the next month from our public safety update. But this is just something I wanted to draw attention to and talk about and encourage the public and media as we look at these, to look at the unique nuances of each of these cases and how they affect our community. One more thing I wanted to comment on today was the missing person case of Mr. Weathersby. I want to thank the public. In my career, I've never seen so much public interest in a case when it comes to Mr. Weathersby. He was known and loved by many, and therefore there's a lot of interest. And the public has been outstanding. If you pull up our software system, you'll see call after call after call of people who have called in tips or called in reported sightings, of which we've been able to follow up with and work with, but at this point haven't been able to find. So I encourage the public, again, take a look. My hope is, as media, you'll all run the story again tonight and use the information that you have at your disposal to highlight this story again. So if people do see him, take a good look at that picture. Make sure you remember it, so that way if we get more tips, it could be the one that help us get resolution on this and find Mr. Weathersby. So again, Lieutenant Nyberg covered kind of the nuances of it. I'm just here to say an engaged public is good, so keep your eyes open. And if you have tips on any of these cases, I think I can go to all our homicides and this missing person case and say public information is key. And some of our homicides, we're still missing information that I know people have that they could provide us through Crime Stoppers or through different sources, because again, we're there, we need information, and that helps. It could break the case for us. So I'll take any other questions you have at this time.
I have a couple. How many of the homicides are currently still being worked on?
All of them.
Out of the 8?
Yeah. So what I'll say is when we have a homicide, until that case is finished in the court, it stays assigned to that detective. That detective is always looking at information. There's still information from our first one of the year that we're gathering and looking to build cases. And so that'll continue to go up until prosecution or court resolution.
I'm trying to keep your positive vibe here, but like,
Yeah.
how many
Oh,
are
sure.
unsolved?
Sure.
I was trying to frame the question in
Yeah.
a way that was positive, but.
We have, as far as I can't go through the Rolodex in my head, but we have arrests or person of interest in many of these cases. I don't have it in front of me, but we have solid leads, solid advancements, and again, we feel good with where we're at, but obviously we want to be even better with the information that we have. I just don't have it in front of me because.
And then the Weathersby case, I know, like I said, the rumor mill was kind of going around. How
Absolutely.
does that affect you guys?
It doesn't, because here's what we know, and this comes back to Mr. Lally's comment earlier about the Constitution. Like we know what actionable intelligence is for us. Like we know what information is that we can do things with, what we can't do things with. Obviously, we pay attention to everything, right? And there's certain nuggets of information that you're like, okay, you file that under, that's the interesting but not actionable file, right? But we're talking about actionable intelligence, whether that's sifting through video footage, whether it's phones or financials or things of that nature. So while there may be circulating, I think there's a lot of internet sleuths out there, right? Come up with some good things, and we'll obviously pay attention to everything, but only act or in a government action do what we're allowed to do within our profession and
So
confines
you
of our
guys will
job.
take any information you can get,
Yep.
whether it's rumor mill or potential rumor mill or not?
Yeah, I think Crime Stoppers is a good outlet for rumor mill stuff, right? Like actual sightings or actual in the moment intel that we see, and of course we'll follow up with everything. We don't want to inundate Metro Communications or our detectives who are literally tirelessly working. Well, they're tired actually. I'll take that back. They're not tirelessly working. They're working super hard and they're tired because they're professionals. But we want to make sure that actual in the moment stuff we get, the other stuff we'll work on as we see and kind of file away. If we see trends develop. But for now, we want to just keep communication with the family, keep communication with his friends, and keep communication with the public to find Mr. Withersby.
So obviously, like you said, these regarding some of these recent homicides, these are not random shootings.
Correct.
They're just going around. Do you see is there a, I guess, a narrative that you see in connecting these anything, firearms, the need
Sure.
of public, I guess,
Sure.
what do you look at these and see as what the public should know, what the public should be thinking about? Again,
Yep.
even knowing these, like you said, these are not what people maybe think of when they think of a
Yeah.
homicide necessarily.
For sure. And again, avoiding broad generalizations, right? But there's just a lot of these situations, there's just people that we're familiar with, right? And not everyone, but some of them, like they've been involved in the system in some way, shape, or form. And you're not gonna maybe like the answer I give you, but it also speaks back to early intervention, like interceding with people upstream rather than downstream to give them support services, but also other areas. I come back to mentorship quite a bit to impact people's lives in a positive way, right? Especially when it comes to certain cases. I think you just kind of see we typically have names we know and things that we've dealt with in the past. And again, by no means does that take away the victims, and loss of life is tragic. Absolutely. I've said it every single time I've been up here to talk about whether it's an officer involved shooting or a homicide. But we have ways we can impact our community that are outside of, like, this is over now, right? It's done. There's nothing, we're not going to show up in the DeLorean and go back and change it, right? So we have to focus on what we're doing now within the community to make sure that young people in particular are positively impacted and have a good quality of life and the resources that they have to be successful. So.
In 2020, I think it was COVID, and
Yeah.
we contributed to the murders to maybe being bored and stuck at home.
Yeah.
Do you have any suspicions of what the increase or why the increase in homicides this year?
It just is, again, looking at some of these unique cases, you start the year off with a triple homicide, that's going to obviously change your numbers quite a bit, right? Completely unique event, but also like we talked about with that one, something that's happened in the past in our community. I think it was 1970 something, all right? With that one, been a while, something we've seen before. I could even say when people have brought up some of these more recent shootings, it seems sensational at the moment, but especially I can tell you about one at this location, one at this location, one at this location, just in my career, that were similar of nature and had similar tones, right? And so, again, for us, we've been here, we understand where we're at. It's a trend that I hope to see reverse. I'll give you a little sneak peek right now for what we'll talk about later in the month in our public safety briefing. Our aggravated assaults are actually down for the year. Our stolen cars are actually down for the year. All of our major property crimes captions are actually down for the year. So we're year by year, trend by trend, monitoring what happens. And for this year, we have the unfortunate spot to be in a trend where our homicides are trending up. So,
Here's one, it's not in everyone.
yep.
And talked about this last week with Sam as well. I mean, the commonality here, a lot of these is a number, and it's a 9mm.
Yeah. I could get into that, like as far as what we see on the streets, as far as calibers, you know.
What should be done? I
Oh,
mean,
man.
there's just a lot of guns.
Yeah.
You've talked
Yeah.
about this in the
Yeah.
past, like, this
I
is a
have.
change in the last,
Yep.
in your career.
Yep, in
No
my
guns,
career.
Guns.
Yeah, and I think we can get really deep into the politics on this, and typically you bring up a gun, it becomes a two-way issue, it becomes all the different political undertones that surround that. I can just tell you from our standpoint, we as cops don't like seeing a lot of guns on the streets. We don't like seeing a lot of guns being used. We don't like seeing a lot of stolen guns being involved in a lot of these situations. There's some action to be taken. I think responsible gun ownership is not a political issue. I think leaving your gun unlocked in your car is a common sense issue. And if that offends somebody, I'm sorry, right? But it is what it is, because we see it now on these cases where some of these guns have surfaced, and that obviously, again, is a big deal, right? And so we'll let the lawmakers do what the lawmakers do best, which is talk about what potentially could be done on that front. But we know that we as individuals, as humans, right, who have guns or can practice responsible gun ownership, because like I said, that's just one simple step we can take. But
What should the penalty be for for unresponsible gun owner? I mean, this is your problem,
Yeah,
right? You're
yeah.
not gonna get anything through the South Dakota legislature, you
Yeah.
already know that.
so it's difficult. We can look at what other states are doing and see what's there. It's going to become a hot button issue no matter how you bring it up, and that's probably not one that, with the amount of work our agency has right now, that I'm going to offer a solid opinion on. We got to worry about what we're dealing with in the moment, right? As far as what that is, and that's a community conversation, Patrick. I think you're right about what that issue is. We just know that, again, at this point, we're seeing more guns, more regular that they're being used, and the tragic consequences of that action, right? Anything else? All right. Sam, you got anything else to talk about, or no? Good. All right. Yeah. Nothing else of interest on the log. We've given you a lot of stuff interest already, and so again, stories will develop, things will move forward. Again, encourage you as media to reinvigorate Mr. Weatherby's story for our public, so that way we don't lose sight on him and some of these other stories that'll be out there too. So appreciate you highlighting that as well. Thank you.